Brittany Marsh snatched the letter off the counter with 2 fingers, the way someone lifts a used napkin, and dropped it into the trash can behind her desk without reading a single word. Then she leaned forward, both palms flat on the marble, and looked down at the man in the wheelchair. "Let me be honest with you." Her voice carried to every corner of the lobby. A black man rolling in off the street with a printed letter and a story. "I've seen this before. The charity office is 2 blocks east. They're very kind over there." Someone near the elevator laughed. She wasn't done. "Sweetheart, the partner's up on that floor." She tilted her head toward the ceiling. "They don't take meetings with people who can't afford a decent coat." A beat of silence. Then she smiled, wide, unhurried, performing for the room. "And honestly, even if you did have an appointment, look at you. You really think you belong in a building like this?" The man in the wheelchair didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He just looked up at her with the stillness of someone who had already decided how this morning would end. He knew something she didn't. In 8 minutes, the managing partner of this firm would come sprinting across that marble floor, and the single word he used would cost Brittany Marsh everything she'd spent 7 years building. Stay close. Drop your city and local time in the comments. And if this is your first time here, you'll want to subscribe before this story is over. Washington, D.C. wakes up differently in January. By 7:40 in the morning, K Street was already moving the rhythm of a city that runs on decisions on filings, on the carefully chosen language of people who charge by the hour. Taxis hissed through slush on 19th Street. A coffee cart on the corner was doing the kind of business that only happens when the temperature drops below freezing and everyone needs something warm to hold. Steam climbed from the sidewalk grates. 2 lobbyists in identical overcoats passed each other without nodding. The pale gray light, flat, cold, the color of old legal paper, fell across the glass towers of the financial district, as though it expected nothing new from any of them. Halfway down the block, rising 24 floors above the pavement, the tower that housed Hargrove and Associates caught that light on its upper floors. Brass lettering above the entrance. A revolving door already spinning with the first arrivals. Through the glass, even from the sidewalk, you could see the lobby, the living green wall, the long white marble reception desk, a brass chandelier scattering pale gold light down onto polished stone. It was by every visible measure one of the most prestigious civil litigation firms in the country. Raymond Easton had known this for more than 2 decades. He had also, for the past 18 months, studied it the way a surgeon studies a patient before the first incision. Not its reputation, but its infrastructure. Client retention rates, partner attrition, malpractice exposure, cash flow cycles, billing efficiency, and most critically, the aging case management systems still running on software built in 1998 that cost the firm roughly $400,000 a year in inefficiency it had never bothered to calculate. 4 months ago, through a holding company called Meridian Ridge, LLC, the acquisition had closed quietly. 60% controlling interest of Hargrove and Associates. The announcement to all 340 employees across 3 offices was scheduled for noon today, but Ray Easton had one thing left to do first. He had grown up 12 miles from this building in southeast D.C., in a narrow house where his grandmother kept a handwritten rule taped above the kitchen door. Not a Bible verse, she had those elsewhere. This one was hers in blue ink, on a torn index card that had yellowed at the edges by the time Ray was old enough to read it. You learn everything you need to know about a place by how it treats the person who has nothing to offer it. She had been talking about churches when she first said it. Ray had spent 32 years watching it apply with equal precision to courtrooms, boardrooms, and every lobby in between. Before his name went on the wall of Hargrove and Associates, he wanted to see it through the stranger's eyes. The nobody's eyes. Except that nobodies didn't typically arrive carrying 60% of the building. and Ray no longer walked through doors at all. The multiple sclerosis diagnosis had come on a Tuesday afternoon in a clinic on Wisconsin Avenue. He had driven himself, which in retrospect said something about who he was. His left hand had been trembling for 6 weeks. He had attributed it, in sequence, to too much caffeine, insufficient sleep, and the accumulated weight of 15 years on the federal bench. The neurologist had been careful with the words. Ray had been careful too, receiving the information the way he had once received difficult verdicts, with both hands open steadily until the weight of it settled into something familiar enough to carry. By 57, the wheelchair was constant. By 58, it was simply the vehicle through which he moved through the world. No different in his own accounting of himself from any other tool a practical man uses without apology. He had dressed that morning with deliberate intention. The armor, the charcoal suit, the silver cufflinks that a Supreme Court justice had pressed into his palm at the retirement ceremony hung in the closet untouched. Instead, a gray quarter-zip pullover, dark slacks, a pair of gloves with a small tear at the left thumb he had been meaning to replace since November. His wheelchair was the same one from 3 years ago, a scuff on the left footrest from a curb on Connecticut Avenue, and a cartoon rocket ship sticker on the right armrest that his 7-year-old granddaughter had pressed there in October, which he had never once considered removing. He looked by every surface measure like a man who had no particular reason to be walking into a building like this. That was precisely the point. He left his Georgetown apartment at 8:15. The January cold came straight off the Potomac. Not the tentative cold of early winter, but the hard, declarative cold of a city that has long since made its peace with what it is. His gloved hands worked the wheels in the steady rhythm he had spent 3 years building, block after block, past the coffee cart, past the lobbyists, past a woman walking a terrier that had no business being outside in this temperature. He had been cold before. It had never once changed the destination. He turned onto K Street at 8:47. The tower rose ahead of him. Through the lobby glass, the chandelier glittered. He turned toward the accessible side entrance. The construction barrier was there before he had covered half the distance. A heavy steel frame, no signage, no detour arrow, no explanation, just an obstacle sitting across the full width of the access ramp, as if someone had placed it mid-thought and walked away. There was no path around it that his chair could navigate without dropping 3 inches off a curb onto wet pavement. He sat in the cold for 4 minutes. No one stopped. A man in a camel coat stepped around the barrier without breaking stride the way people navigate things that have never once been their problem. On the 4th minute, a young woman coming out of the revolving door held it open with her back and gestured him through. He thanked her. She nodded and was already on her phone before she reached the corner. He rolled into the lobby at 8:51. The warmth hit him immediately, dry, heated air, the faint scent of roses and fresh coffee. The marble floor was polished to a mirror finish. It was a beautiful lobby. It was also a building with exactly one functioning accessible entrance, and someone had blocked it with no explanation and no apology to anyone who needed to know. Ray filed that detail away the way he had once filed exhibits, neat, precise, dated for later, and rolled toward the front desk. He had no way of knowing yet that the barrier was going to be the least of what this morning had prepared for him. The front desk at Hargrove and Associates was 11 feet of unbroken white marble, positioned at a height that had been standard when the lobby was designed in 1991 and had not been revisited since. For a person standing behind it, the desk projected authority clean, deliberate a barrier between the lobby and everything above it. For a person seated in a wheelchair, approaching from across 40 feet of polished stone, it meant something else entirely. It meant that by the time Ray reached it, the counter rose nearly to his chin. From Brittany's side, he was barely visible above the surface. He had spent 3 years learning not to let that register on his face. Brittany Marsh had stood behind that desk since before the green wall was installed, before the firm expanded to 2 additional floors, before 3 senior partners retired and 2 were made. 7 years. She knew every partner by first name and every client by billing code. She knew which associates were on partnership track and which ones were quietly being managed toward the door. She knew the espresso preferences of 14 people across 14 floors and had never once been asked to write any of it down because some knowledge lives in the body rather than the file. She also administered the lobby's invisible social order with the quiet precision that only comes from years of unchallenged practice. The hierarchy was not written anywhere. It did not need to be. Cashmere coat-polished shoes astride that assumed the door would open, the smile bloomed before the revolving door finished turning. Worn jacket, uncertain step, anything that suggested someone who had not been expected a pointed finger toward the service elevator, no eye contact required. It was not cruelty in her own understanding of herself. It was maintenance, order. The lobby ran smoothly because she kept it that way, and she had spent 7 years deciding without anyone ever asking exactly what smooth meant. She had been watching Ray since the moment his wheels crossed the threshold. The wet tracks on the marble had caught her eye first. 2 thin lines of melted slush running from the side entrance across 40 feet of her floor. Then the wheelchair. Then the man in the gray, quarter-zip worn gloves. No briefcase, no visible appointment badge. No visible reason for being here at 10 minutes to 9 on a Tuesday morning in January. She did not stand. She did not smile. She settled her hands on the desk and waited. On the mezzanine level above the lobby, a young woman named Deja Thomas looked up from her monitor. She was 27 years old. 4 years at this firm, every one of them spent in the paralegal pool, sustained by the combination of academic stubbornness and financial necessity that characterizes people who have been told their whole lives they will need to work twice as hard to arrive at the same place. She was 90 credit hours into her law degree at Georgetown, earned entirely at night after full days of work. By the internal metrics of the firm, she was the most accurate legal researcher on staff. By the unwritten social geography of this lobby, she was functionally invisible. She had watched Brittany sort human beings at that front desk for 4 years. The process had long since stopped surprising her. But something about this particular man, the deliberate stillness of him, the way he moved across the marble as if he had already calculated exactly what he was walking into, made her put down her coffee and keep watching. Ray stopped at the desk. He waited one measured moment. "Good morning. Raymond Easton. I have a 10 o'clock meeting on the 20th floor." Brittany looked at him. Then she pulled her keyboard toward herself and began typing, with one finger. Slowly. The deliberateness of it was the entire point. Not efficiency, not speed, but the careful manufacture of waiting, which is one of the oldest ways one person communicates to another exactly how much they matter. "I don't see you anywhere, sir." "Try the board calendar. The meeting is with Mr. Hargrove's office." She did not try the board calendar. She moved the mouse in a slow, unhurried arc across her screen. "Our system shows client appointments and general conference bookings. Nothing under Easton." A calibrated pause. "Are you certain you have the right building?" Ray's hands were still on his wheels. "Hargrove and Associates, K Street Northwest. Yes. The meeting was confirmed by Mr. Hargrove's assistant on Friday." Brittany leaned back slightly. Her eyes traveled from his face to his gloves, specifically to the small tear at the left thumb, and back to his face. The examination lasted no more than 2 seconds. It was not subtle, and it was not meant to be. Sir Senior Partner calendars are managed through a separate executive system. Front desk doesn't have direct access. This was not true. She simply had not looked. If someone confirmed your meeting, they should have sent you a visitor authorization. Do you have documentation? I have a letter, Ray said. He reached into his folder. Something shifted in Brittany's expression, barely, almost imperceptibly, but Ray had spent 15 years on the federal bench reading faces under oath. It was there. A slight tightening at the corners of her eyes, the look of a person recalculating in real time. Letters can be printed, she said. She said it before he had finished reaching. Up on the mezzanine, Deja Thomas saw this. She saw the keyboard touched with one finger. She saw the mouse moved in the wrong direction. She saw the sentence fired before the letter was even produced. She understood what each of those things meant individually and together. She picked up her phone. Ray placed the letter on the counter, Hargrove and Associates letterhead. Carter Hargrove, the third's personal signature, the firm's gold seal embossed at the lower left corner. Brittany picked it up with 2 fingers. She did not read it. She turned it over once, set it face down on the marble, then, with the unhurried certainty of someone who has already decided, dropped it into the trash can behind her desk. Across the lobby, the silver-haired woman on the sofa slowly lowered her magazine. Ray looked at the trash can, then at Brittany. That was official correspondence on firm letterhead, he said. Signed by Carter Hargrove. Letterhead can be replicated. Brittany's voice had found its register now, smooth, certain, carrying the easy authority of someone whose decisions have never been seriously challenged from behind this desk. Last spring, a man produced a very convincing set of credentials and made it to the 14th floor before security stopped him. He left with 2 laptops and a paralegal's work bag. So you'll forgive me if I don't extend unlimited trust to a walk-in with a printed letter. A brief pause. Her smile returned, thin, controlled, a performance piece, especially one who just rolled in off the street with no appointment in the system. From somewhere near the elevator bank, a sound half-laugh quickly covered. Tyler Nash, 29 years old, third-year associate, had stopped on his way upstairs and was now watching from the mezzanine railing with his phone angled low. Brittany reached beneath the desk and pressed a button, not the line to the 20th floor, not the direct ring to Carter Hargrove's assistant, but the internal page to the associate pool. 30 seconds later, Tyler appeared at the top of the mezzanine stairs. She gave him the look that said, "Come down here," without making it obvious. He came. "Tyler, would you mind helping our visitor understand the check-in process?" she said pleasantly. "He seems to be having some difficulty." Tyler Nash was not at his core a bad person. He would spend a significant portion of the next several months turning that Tuesday over in his mind and arriving each time at the same uncomfortable conclusion that not being bad is not by itself enough. That watching something wrong unfold in front of you and deciding it is not your business is its own form of participation. But on this morning he was 29 and junior to everyone in this building, and Brittany Marsh had 7 years of institutional weight behind her and a tone of voice that made declining feel professionally dangerous. He came down the stairs. "Sir," he said, with the voice of a man who already knows he won't be proud of what follows. "Is there something I can help clarify for you?" "I'd like someone to call the 20th floor," Ray said. "That's all. One call to confirm the appointment." Tyler glanced at Brittany. Brittany looked at her monitor. The 2-second silence between them contained an entire conversation, a negotiation conducted without words, settled in under a breath. "I'm afraid we can't route visitors to executive floors without completed check-in protocol," Tyler said. He did not look at Ray while he said it. Brittany let the moment settle. Then she leaned forward, forearms flat on the marble, and looked down at Ray directly. When she spoke again, her voice was different, not louder, but wider. Projected, designed to fill the lobby and let every person in it know exactly what kind of situation this was. "Sir." The word came out gentle and explanatory, wrapped in the tone of someone doing a favor. "I understand you may be dealing with some kind of legal matter. That's nothing to be embarrassed about. But this firm handles complex corporate litigation and federal regulatory cases. We take clients by referral only at rates that start at $800 an hour." A measured pause. "Legal aid services on 7th Street work with people in your circumstances. They are genuinely excellent over there. Your circumstances." The phrase landed in the lobby and spread outward the way cold does not sudden, but inevitable touching everyone within range. A man in a navy suit near the sofa became very interested in his phone. A woman near the cafe counter turned away and took one quiet step to the left. Two associates by the elevator lowered their voices without stopping their conversation. Lillian Price, 72, white-haired, a client of this firm for 19 years, sat on the leather sofa with a copy of The Atlantic open in her lap. She did not look away. She looked from Brittany to Ray and stayed there, her jaw tightening by degrees. On the mezzanine, Deja Thomas was already on her feet. She came down the stairs at a measured pace, not running, not making a scene. She approached from Ray's left, voice low. "Excuse me. I can put in a quick call upstairs if you'd like to confirm. It would take 2 minutes." Brittany's voice moved across the lobby like a blade thrown sideways. "Deja." Flat. Final. "Paralegals do not manage lobby intake. That is not your job description, and it is not your place. Return to your desk before I file a client interference report. This is your second warning this month." Deja stopped. 90 credit hours. 14 months from the bar exam. Rent due in 9 days. She held Brittany's gaze for exactly 2 seconds, long enough for both of them to understand precisely what was happening and precisely what it would cost, and then she turned and went back up the stairs. She did not go all the way to her desk. She sat down on the 3rd step, where the angle of the mezzanine railing blocked her from Brittany's sightline, and she opened her phone and began composing a text. Ray had watched all of this. He had watched the calculation in Brittany's eyes when Deja started down the stairs, the instant assessment of leverage the decision made in under a second. He had seen that calculation in witnesses on the stand for 15 years. He knew what it meant, and he knew exactly what it cost the person on the receiving end of it. "Your name," he said quietly. Brittany blinked as if the request were slightly absurd. "I beg your pardon. Your name. For my records." A pause. Then she unclipped the gold nameplate from her lapel and held it up at eye level, the way someone presents a credential they are proud of. Brittany Marsh, M-A-R-S-H. The smile returned fully confident. "Spell it however you like." Ray looked at her for a long moment. "I'll spell it correctly," he said. "Spelling matters particularly on legal documents." The word documents moved through Brittany's composure like cold air under a sealed door. She felt it, and she closed the gap and kept moving. She reached beneath the desk. She lifted the receiver of the lobby phone, not the internal line, but the external one, and dialed. Ray recognized the 3 digits before she finished pressing them. She held his gaze while the line connected. "Yes," she said in a voice that was warm and professional and entirely for an audience. "This is the front desk at Hargrove and Associates on K Street, NW. I'd like to request a security presence at reception." A pause, listening. "No, not urgent. Just a visitor who needs some assistance locating the exit." She hung up, folded her hands on the marble, looked at Ray with the expression of someone who has just handed a problem to someone else. "You wanted me to make a call," she said. "I made one." Marcus Cole crossed the lobby with the unhurried stride of a man whose worst call in 6 years had been a parking dispute outside the loading dock. He was broad-shouldered gray at the temples, carrying the particular stillness of someone who has spent 2 decades making decisions in situations where stillness was the most important tool available. 22 years with the D.C. Metro Police, 6 years at this firm. He had developed over that time a reasonably accurate internal instrument for reading rooms. This room did not read the way Brittany's call had described. He took in the man in the wheelchair from 20 feet out, hands resting on the wheels, folder closed on his lap, back straight. Eyes steady and unhurried, tracking Marcus's approach with the calm attention of someone who has spent a long time learning exactly how these moments unfold. No elevated voice, no aggressive posture, no visible agitation. He looked to Marcus's trained assessment, like a man who was waiting for something he was fairly certain was going to arrive. He did not look like a disturbance. Brittany intercepted Marcus before he reached the desk, heels clicking on marble, voice pitched upward, performing for the room behind her. He's been here over 20 minutes. He walked in without checking in, refused to follow protocol, and when I tried to process him correctly, he became aggressive. I need him removed before the morning partners meeting lets out of the elevator. Marcus glanced at the timestamp on the security screen clipped to his belt. The man had come through the side door 11 minutes ago. He kept his face neutral and turned to Ray. "Sir, can you tell me what's happening here?" "I have a 10 o'clock board meeting on the 20th floor," Ray said. "I asked for one phone call to confirm the appointment. That request was declined twice. I also presented an official letter from Mr. Hargrove's office." He nodded toward the trash can behind the desk. "It's in there, unread." Marcus looked at Brittany. "The letter was unverifiable," she said. "I followed protocol." "It's one call," Marcus said. Brittany's posture shifted. A degree of warmth left her expression. "Marcus?" Her voice dropped, intimate, deliberate, the tone of someone who believes they are doing you a favor by telling you the difficult truth quietly. "I've been at this desk for 7 years. I know what a legitimate client looks like, and I know what this is. If you make that call and it turns out to be nothing, that's both our careers on the table. Is that where we're going?" Marcus said nothing. His hand, which had been drifting toward the desk phone, went still. That stillness, that small, visible hesitation was all the signal Brittany needed. She stepped around the desk, reached forward, and lifted Ray's leather folder from his lap. "Let's just see what's actually in here." Her voice was bright, certain, the voice of someone who has already decided they are about to be proven right in front of an audience. She turned the folder upside down and shook it, and shook. The documents burst loose and scattered across 40 feet of polished marble. Pages skidded under the sofa. A pen rolled against Marcus's boot. And one-page heavy creamstock, embossed letterhead came to rest face up in the center of the lobby floor. In bold capital letters across the top, it read, "Hargrove and Associates Equity Transfer Agreement, Meridian Ridge, LLC Confidential." Nobody read it. Nobody ever reads the most important thing in the room. Tyler Nash, watching from the mezzanine railing, looked down at the word confidential, glanced at his phone, and looked away. Ray put his hands on his wheels and began without a word to collect his documents. Each page required him to lean forward and extend fully out of the chair, his shoulders absorbing the weight, his arms working in the practiced arc of someone who has done this kind of reaching 10,000 times. His face remained entirely still. He had stopped giving strangers the satisfaction of watching him strain years ago. Deja Thomas was already off the 3rd step and moving across the marble before Brittany saw her coming. "Don't!" Brittany's voice arrived like a door slamming shut. "Deja, if you touch one of those pages, I will have you walked out of this building before noon. Client interference, unauthorized involvement in a security matter. It goes on your file today. 19 credit hours from your degree is a long time to lose your job." 90 credit hours, not 19. But the threat understood its own arithmetic well enough. Deja stopped. She had 2 pages in her hands already. She looked at Ray. "Set them down where I can reach them," Ray said quietly. "It's all right. Go protect what you've built. You've already done more than anyone else in this room." Deja placed the pages within his reach. Then she turned her back to Brittany, sat down on the lobby floor beside Ray's chair, and angled her phone away from the desk. She opened her messages. She began composing a text to Janet Reeves Carter Hargrove's assistant, who bought a green tea from the lobby cafe every morning at 9:15, and who always without exception read her messages immediately. Brittany watched this. Then she raised her own phone, turned the screen outward, and activated the camera. "For evidence," she said to no particular person. She zoomed in on the cartoon rocket sticker on the wheelchair's armrest. Her voice lifted, bright, performed, aimed at the lobby and whatever audience it contained. "Look at this. If you're going to walk into a building like this and claim a board meeting..." She stopped. Because Marcus Cole was no longer looking at her. He was crouched on one knee beside the equity transfer agreement, lying face up on the marble floor. He was reading it. 3 lines. 4. His lips had stopped moving. Something behind his eyes had gone very quiet. He looked up at Ray. Ray held his gaze with the patience of a man who has been waiting for someone in this lobby to actually read something. "Keep going," Ray said. "Ray, you're almost there." "Marcus!" Brittany's voice hit the lobby like a palm on a table, sudden flat, designed to end a conversation before it found its footing. "That document is confidential firm property. It is not relevant to this situation, and I need you to put it down and do your job." Marcus looked at the document in his hand. He had read 6 lines. 6 lines was enough to understand that something was deeply wrong, not with the man in the wheelchair, but with the last 30 minutes of his own morning. He set the document down on the marble counter. Not dropped it, set it, face up where it was visible. "Ma'am," he said, turning to Brittany, "I need to make a phone call to the 20th floor to confirm this appointment." The lobby held its breath for exactly 1 second. Then Brittany stepped between Marcus and the desk phone. "No." The word came out with a finality that had no room for negotiation, no texture of doubt. "Do you understand what it looks like if we interrupt Carter Hargrove's morning briefing with a false alarm? Do you understand what that costs both of us?" Her voice lowered, intimate now, conspiratorial, the tone of someone sharing a truth they didn't have to share. "I have been at this desk for 7 years, Marcus. I know this firm. I know what a real client looks like, and I know what this is. And if you make that call and it turns out to be nothing, that's your record. Again." She let that word do its work. 3 months before Kezia's tuition bill comes due, is that really the hill you want? The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of the specific weight of a man who had not told Brittany his daughter's name, and who now understood that she had read his employee file at some point and had kept that information precisely for a moment like this one. Marcus's hand drifted away from the phone. It was the smallest movement, less than a second. But Ray saw it. Deja saw it from the lobby floor. Lillian Price saw it from the sofa, where she had been sitting in perfect stillness for the last 8 minutes. What it meant was not difficult to interpret. The one person who should have made a single phone call had just been talked out of it, using his daughter's college tuition as leverage. "Marcus." Ray's voice was unhurried. Not a plea, not a command, just present the way a voice is when it has spent 15 years filling courtrooms and has learned that volume is the least effective form of authority. "I want you to remember something." Marcus turned to him. "I have not raised my voice once this morning. I have not made a threat, created a scene, or touched anyone's property. I presented a signed letter that was thrown in the trash without being read. I asked for 1 phone call that was refused on 3 separate occasions. And the timeline you're being asked to enforce is one you already know is wrong. Your own clock told you so the moment you walked over here." Ray paused. "I want you to remember that when this is over, you were the one who asked me politely. That is going to matter. Both things are going to matter, what you did and how you did it." Something shifted behind Marcus's eyes. Not a decision, not yet, but the beginning of one. Brittany had already moved past him. She planted herself directly in front of the wheelchair, close enough to look down, far enough to perform for the room, and raised her phone with her thumb resting on the keypad. 3 digits already dialed. The green call button waiting. Last chance. Her voice was pleasant, nearly conversational in the way that a locked door is conversational. You leave on your own right now, or I press this button and we do it the formal way. Criminal trespass. A report. Your name in a system. She tilted her head, the smile precise and unhurried. I will tell you right now, I look absolutely fine in a deposition. 10 seconds. From the leather sofa, Lillian Price set her magazine face down on the cushion beside her. I have been a client of this firm for 19 years. Her voice was not loud. It was the voice of a woman who has spent 7 decades meaning exactly what she says and stopped apologizing for it somewhere around age 50. I have paid this firm considerable money over those 19 years, and I have referred 6 other clients to this building, and I am watching a man who has done nothing wrong be told to leave by a person who has not stopped being wrong since he walked through the door. She looked at Brittany directly. I want that noted. Brittany did not look at her. Billing records lived on the partner's floor. Conscience had no rate card at this desk. Ray looked up at the phone, then at the woman holding it. He had sentenced people across a federal courtroom for 15 years, had looked at them in the moment they finally understood what their choices had produced, and watched their faces change as the reality arrived. He recognized the expression Brittany was wearing right now. It was the expression of someone who was still entirely certain they were holding all the cards. You will remember this morning, he said. Quiet, declarative. The way a fact is stated when it has already happened. Brittany's arm swung toward the exit. Marcus. Now. Marcus exhaled through his nose. He walked behind the wheelchair. He reached for the push handles. His fingers closed around the grips. Don't push my chair, Ray said. Nobody pushes my chair. Sir, I'm sorry, Marcus said, and every syllable of it was true. And he still did not let go. Across the lobby, Deja Thomas pressed send. The elevator bank on the far wall chimed once, clean and bright. The doors slid open, and a man stepped out who had not run anywhere in 22 years. Carter Hargrove III did not run. This was understood about him the way certain things are understood about people of a particular professional gravity, not as a personal characteristic, but as a fact of bearing like the cut of his suits or the measured authority of his courtroom voice. 55 years old, silver-haired, 22 years as managing partner. His pace through his own lobby on any given morning was itself a statement, unhurried, deliberate, the walk of a man who has never had cause to rush toward anything. The man who came out of that elevator was not walking. His jacket was half-buttoned. His glasses were clenched in his right fist. His tie had shifted 3 inches to the left, and he was moving across the marble at something that was, without question, a full run. The kind of run that happens when a person receives information that instantly reclassifies the last 30 minutes of someone else's life, and their body begins moving before their mind has finished understanding the cost. He covered 40 feet of lobby in seconds. Stop! The word did not echo. The marble absorbed it. But every person in the room received it simultaneously, the way you receive the sound of something irreversible. Not with the ears first, but with the body, a full system recognition that something has just changed. Marcus's hands came off the wheelchair handles as if the grips had gone hot. Brittany lowered her phone. Her thumb was still resting on the call button. She looked at Carter Hargrove's face, at the particular quality of his expression, the absence of everything professional, and managed that she had built 7 years of behavior around, and something cold and structural shifted inside her chest. Not guilt. Not yet. Something more immediate. The sensation of the ground becoming uncertain. Carter reached the front of the desk and didn't stop behind it. He walked around it entirely past Brittany, as if she were not standing there, and stopped directly in front of the wheelchair. He bent forward, hands on his knees, chest heaving, pulled 2 full breaths. Then he straightened and turned to face the lobby. Everyone. His voice required no volume. In 22 years of managing partners' meetings, client dinners, and federal depositions, Carter Hargrove had developed the particular vocal quality of a man who has never needed to be loud to command a room. This is Raymond Easton. He is the founder of Easton Legal Systems. As of 4 months ago, he is the majority shareholder of Hargrove and Associates, holding 60% controlling interest of this firm. A single breath. He is my employer. He is every person in this building's employer. The lobby went to a place it had never been before. The waterfall wall kept moving. The chandelier kept scattering the same pale light across the same polished stone it had scattered every morning for 3 decades. The HVAC ran. The espresso machine behind the cafe counter ticked as it cooled. Everything continued exactly as it had. And yet 43 people standing in that lobby were performing in silence and in sequence, a calculation that rewrote everything they had observed for the past 30 minutes. 60%. Controlling interest, employer. The man Brittany had directed to the legal aid office on 7th Street. The man whose letter she had dropped into a trash can without reading a word of it. The man she had filmed from behind her desk and zoomed in on narrating for a phone audience. The man she had threatened with a 911 call 40 seconds ago. He owned the building they were all standing in. Brittany's phone slipped from her hand and hit the marble face down. The screen cracked corner to corner. Nobody looked at it. Every eye in the room was doing the same arithmetic, arriving at the same answer, and looking at the same desk. 3 minutes earlier, the 22nd floor had detonated without anyone below it knowing. Janet Reeves, Carter's assistant, had been arranging coffee service for the morning briefing when her phone lit up with a text from a number she recognized as belonging to a paralegal named Deja Thomas, who bought a green tea from her most mornings and occasionally left encouraging notes on the break room whiteboard. The text was 8 words: Raymond Easton is being removed from the lobby. Janet had pulled up the executive board calendar. Ray's 10 a.m. arrival was flagged in red priority, do not reschedule. Then the equity registry. Then she had walked into the briefing room and placed her phone face up on the table in front of Carter Hargrove mid-sentence. He had read the name. The ownership percentage. He had stood up without a word and walked out of the room, and that was when he had started running. He crouched now beside the wheelchair all the way down eye level, and his hand was trembling. Ray could see it. Carter could feel it, and had no way to stop it. Ray, all of the professional architecture was gone from his voice. What remained underneath was simply a man looking at what had happened in his own lobby without any sentence adequate to it. I don't have a version of this that helps, I know that. I had no idea you were— I know you didn't, Ray said. A silence, brief and honest. There's a letter behind your desk, Ray said. It's been face down since around 9 o'clock. You can start with that. Carter stood. He walked behind the desk, reached into the trash, and retrieved the letter. He read it his own signature, the firm's gold seal, the meeting details his assistant had typed 2 days ago. He set it on the counter face up, where it had always belonged. Then he turned to face the lobby. Every head turned in the same direction. Slowly, the way a tide turns, not sudden, but inevitable, pulled by something larger than individual choice. Brittany Marsh had not moved. Her mouth had opened twice and closed twice. The performer's posture, the straight back, The arranged hands, the expression of professional certainty she had worn for 7 years was entirely gone. She looked smaller behind the counter than she had 30 minutes ago, as if the marble itself had grown. For the first time in 7 years, she had run out of words, and the silence that replaced them was the loudest thing in the room. The boardroom on the 20th floor was built to project authority. 14 leather chairs around a table that had cost more than most people's annual salaries. A wall of glass overlooking K Street, where the city moved through its ordinary Tuesday, indifferent to what was unfolding in this room. The firm's name etched into the far wall panel in brass, the same lettering as the entrance below. Unchanged for 22 years, 14 people stood when Ray rolled through the door. Standing was easy now. Everyone could manage it suddenly. Ray came to the head of the table. The chair at that end had been moved aside before he arrived because Carter had texted ahead from the elevator. He set his folder on the polished surface and looked at the faces arranged around the room. Senior partners, equity holders, people whose names appeared on the firm's letterhead. He looked at them the way he had once looked at juries before delivering instructions with the quiet attention of someone who needs to understand before they begin exactly who they are working with. "Before the agenda," he said, "I need you to see something. I'd like IT to pull the lobby camera footage. This morning, 9:49 to 10:15, all available angles." The room exchanged glances. Carter gave a single nod to the IT coordinator at the far end of the table. The wall screen came on. For the next 24 minutes, 14 of the most powerful people at Hargrove and Associates watched their own front lobby in silence. They watched the official letter set face down on the marble without being read. They heard the phrase, "Your circumstances," in clear time-stamped audio, the kind of audio a general counsel recognizes immediately as evidentiary, the kind that moves a conversation about liability from theoretical to documented. They watched the folder lifted and shaken empty across 40 feet of polished floor. They watched their newest majority shareholder lean out of his wheelchair to gather his own documents from the marble, while associates watched from the mezzanine railing, one of them with a phone angled downward. They heard Marcus Cole say, "I'm sorry," in clear lobby audio, and watched his hands close around the push handles of a wheelchair belonging to the man sitting at the head of their conference table right now. They watched a paralegal sit down on the lobby floor and quietly send a text that changed the trajectory of the entire morning. Nobody spoke during the footage. A senior partner placed his hand flat on the table in front of him, as though steadying something that was no longer quite solid. The general counsel, Eleanor Cross, had been writing since the footage began. Not notes, but a parallel document constructed at the particular speed of a woman calculating liability across 4 separate categories simultaneously. One director stared at the ceiling. Another had not moved in 11 minutes. When the screen went dark, Ray let the silence work. Then the HR director's chair scraped back from the table. She gathered her notepad, picked up her phone, and walked out of the room without explanation. Everyone in that boardroom understood precisely where she was going. Nobody said anything. Downstairs in a small conference room with beige walls and a rectangular table and a cardboard cup of water that had gone cold, Brittany Marsh gave her account carefully and without wavering. She had followed protocol. The visitor had not been in the appointment system. The letter was unverified. She had requested security support through the proper internal channel. She had acted at all times in the firm's best interest. The HR director asked, "Were you aware that Mr. Easton's visit was logged in the executive board calendar, which is accessible from the front desk shared system?" Front desk doesn't check the executive calendar for walk-ins. Mr. Easton was not a walk-in. His arrival was flagged as a priority visit. The shared calendar was covered in your onboarding training 3 separate sessions, all documented in your file. A pause. "Is there anything you'd like to add?" Brittany looked at her hands. Then she looked up. I think context is being lost here. We manage situations at that desk every day that nobody on the upper floors ever sees. I made a judgment call based on what was in front of me. The only reason this became a problem is because that particular call turned out to involve someone who mattered to this firm. She stopped. Then quietly, "That's the only real difference. Everyone in that building knows it. The HR director wrote it down, word for word. It was a confession wearing the clothes of a grievance, and it had just been spoken inside a building where every conference room had audio. Marcus Cole arrived at 11:40 without a union representative. He sat down, placed his radio on the table, and told the complete truth from beginning to end. He described the false timeline. He described the mention of his daughter's tuition as leverage. He said he had made the wrong choice under pressure and understood what that meant for his record. When the HR director asked if there was anything else, he set both hands on the table and said, "Deja Thomas. She tried to help him twice and was threatened with termination both times. Whatever this review finds, she was the only person in that lobby who did the job right from the moment he walked in." Deja Thomas was called in last. She was 27 years old. She sat down, placed her phone face down on the table, and told the truth plainly, completely, and without asking for anything. She had 90 credit hours toward her law degree. She would make Ray had already decided an exceptional attorney. Back in the boardroom, the silence had finished its work. Ray folded his hands on the table. 14 people waited. "I'm not going to begin this partnership with a lecture," he said quietly. "The footage already gave it." He paused. "Here is what happens next." Outside the glass wall, K Street moved through its ordinary afternoon. Inside the room, 14 people waited to hear what a building owed the people it had failed. What happened next moved at 2 speeds simultaneously. The first was fast. Before the boardroom meeting adjourned, the HR director had returned with Brittany Marsh's full personnel file, tabbed at 4 locations, each tab marking a document that had not been read carefully enough by the right person at the right time. The second was slow, deliberately, intentionally slow, because Ray Easton had spent 15 years on the federal bench watching what happened when accountability moved faster than process. He had never once seen it end cleanly for anyone in the room. "She is suspended as of this hour," Ray told the board. "Pending a formal review, not terminated in anger, reviewed properly with documentation and due process following every procedure this firm has on record. We hold to the standard even for people who didn't extend us the same courtesy." Nobody argued. The heads around the table moved in the careful, unanimous way of people who had just watched 4 camera angles of their own institutional failure and were no longer in a position to have preferences about the direction of accountability. The formal review took 11 days. Ray had set that timeline himself, not rushed, not prolonged, but thorough. What it found was worse than a bad Tuesday morning. 3 formal complaints against Brittany Marsh in 5 years. Each one closed without meaningful investigation by a supervising manager who described her in internal notes as a reliable, high-performing member of the front desk team. A client with a hearing impairment turned away from the desk in 2022 and told in writing that the firm's interpretation services were unavailable. They had been available and fully operational for 4 years prior. A prospective client with a service animal directed to the building's rear service entrance because Brittany had reported a senior partner's allergy. No such allergy existed, had never been documented, and the senior partner in question had no idea his name had been used. And 14 formal write-up reports filed against Deja Thomas across 4 years, every single one time-stamped within 48 hours of Deja extending kindness to someone Brittany had already decided did not belong in her lobby. 14. The pattern sat in the file with the quiet, irrefutable clarity of a fingerprint pressed into something permanent. Brittany Marsh was terminated for cause on a Thursday morning. She cleared her desk in the presence of the HR director while the temp reception staff watered the lobby plants. No security escort. No public ceremony. Ray had been specific process, not spectacle. The consequences were real, and they were earned, but they were not a performance. They arrived anyway in the slow and permanent way that real consequences always do. 3 weeks after her termination, Brittany gave an interview on a legal industry podcast during a stall in her severance negotiations. She was sorry, she said, if anyone had felt disrespected. The firm had been too quick to respond to external pressure rather than the full facts of the situation. She had been under significant stress, she said, and she said it with a composure that suggested she had rehearsed it, the real victim of a rush to judgment that had ignored her years of service and her genuine commitment to the firm's security. The clip of her saying the only real difference is that one turned out to involve someone who mattered had already been entered into the HR record, shared without comment by 17 separate legal industry accounts, and read aloud in its entirety at the severance negotiation. The board did not find the apology persuasive. The negotiation did not go her way. Ray declined to file a complaint with the EEOC. His general counsel had confirmed in a detailed memo that he had well-documented grounds across 3 categories. Ray read the memo, set it on the corner of his desk, and did not pick it up again. "Filing gets me a settlement and a news cycle," he told the board the following week. "I don't need either. What I need is for the next person who rolls through those doors to be treated like a human being from the moment they arrive. Settlements don't build that. Training does. Ramps do. Counters at the right height do." What followed was called the Easton Standard, a $1.8 million initiative chaired by Ray and funded by the firm. Every client-facing employee across all 3 offices retrained not a webinar, not an online module, but real sessions in a room with real people sitting across a table and talking. People in wheelchairs, with canes, with service dogs, with accents that did not match K Street, with visible differences and invisible ones, taking an hour to explain in plain and specific language what it costs to be treated as though you don't belong somewhere before you've opened your mouth. Every entrance audited firm-wide. The K Street accessible side entrance construction barrier, removed permanently covered awning, installed heated pavement laid beneath the ramp before the following winter. The front desk rebuilt a lower curved wing, added to the right side, so that a person seated in a wheelchair could approach the desk and be met face-to-face at eye level. This detail cost $34,000 in renovation work. Ray noted in the meeting where the figure was approved that the previous desk configuration had cost considerably more than that in a currency that had never appeared on any balance sheet until now. Marcus Cole kept his position. The review board's conclusion was precise. He had been deliberately misled about the timeline, pressured using a personal vulnerability to prevent a single phone call, and had told the complete truth in his review at personal risk to himself. He became in the months that followed something better than blameless. He became the one who told the story every new security hire received it on their first morning in the lobby before their shift began. The Director of Client Experience position was posted firm-wide. The description was thorough and specific and might as well have had one name already written in the header. Deja Thomas passed the bar in October. She started the role the same week at nearly 3 times her paralegal salary. Her first official act was to frame something for the wall behind the rebuilt reception desk. Not a mission statement, not an inspirational quote. The original letter face up behind glass, permanent. 6 months later, on a Tuesday morning in January, the lobby of Hargrove and Associates looked almost exactly the same. Almost. The waterfall wall still moved. The chandelier still scattered pale gold light across the marble. The firm's brass lettering still gleamed above the entrance. 24 floors of glass still rose above K Street, indifferent to weather, unchanged by season. From the sidewalk looking through the glass, the lobby looked the way it had always looked, beautiful, deliberate. A building that understood its own importance. But the accessible side entrance was clear now. A slate-gray awning ran the full length of the ramp, the kind that exists in every building where someone in charge has actually thought about January in Washington. The ramp had been widened by 14 inches. The heating element cast into the concrete beneath it would prevent ice through March. There was a sign at street level in 3 languages, with an arrow pointing the way, the kind of sign so simple and obvious that its 11-year absence was itself a statement about who had been expected to need it. Inside the front desk was different on its right side. A lower curved wing open at one end, built at a height that allowed a person seated in a wheelchair to approach and be received at eye level, where every conversation between 2 human beings belongs. Behind it stood Jerome, 26 years old, hired through the Easton Standard program. His smile was real, and it was for everyone without exception, without calibration, without the invisible social calculus that had governed this lobby for the better part of a decade. He greeted people by name when he knew it, and by good morning when he didn't, and he said it with the same warmth either way. At 9:07, the side door opened. A young man came through it slowly. College age, maybe 20, in a dark hoodie and clean sneakers, the kind of sneakers that are very clean because they are the best pair he owns. He had a printed confirmation email folded in his jacket pocket. He had checked it 4 times on the metro ride over. He stepped inside and stopped just past the threshold, looking up at the chandelier, at the marble, at the 40 floors of glass above him, with the expression of someone trying to determine whether they have been given permission to be here. Jerome waved him over before he had taken 5 steps. "Good morning. You're here for the law school mentorship program. Already typing, already smiling, already making the calculation that every person who enters a building deserves to be welcomed before they have to ask. What's your name?" The young man's name was Devonte. His shoulders dropped 2 full inches in the time it took him to answer the involuntary physical release of a person who had been bracing for something and discovered they didn't need to. 2 minutes later, he was seated near the waterfall wall with a warm coffee and his confirmation email open in front of him, waiting for the partner who would spend the next hour drawing him a map from where he was to where he wanted to go. Nobody filmed him. There was no reason to. Deja Thomas managed the entire client-facing operation now. Her Georgetown law degree was framed on the wall of her 3rd-floor office. She trained every new hire with a single rule written on an index card and taped into the welcome binder. "You will never be written up on this floor for showing someone kindness. Not on my watch." She meant it the way serious people mean things completely, and without exceptions made for convenience. Marcus Cole was 6 months from retirement. He still walked his rounds every morning. He still stopped at the front desk before his shift ended. He still delivered the same speech to every new security hire standing in the lobby before their first shift, making sure the last thing they heard before starting work was the one thing that mattered most. One day, someone is going to come through that door looking like nobody in particular. Treat them like they own the place. Because sometimes, and I'm telling you this from personal experience, they do. Carter Hargrove arrived through the side entrance occasionally now, on mornings when he wanted to remember something. He said it took 45 seconds longer than the main door. He said it was the best 45 seconds of his workday. Tyler Nash no longer worked in corporate litigation. He had requested a transfer to the pro bono unit 8 days after the lobby incident, without giving a reason that anyone pushed him to explain. People who knew him understood that it was not a career move. It was closer to a reckoning executed quietly and without announcement, which is the only kind that costs anything real. Lillian Price remained a client. She had written a letter to the board that Ray had read personally and filed carefully. She still told the story at her book club on the third Thursday of every month, with an ending she always delivered the same way. And the man they tried to throw out rebuilt the lobby and made sure it was open all the way. In Ray's office on the 22nd floor, there were no motivational posters, no framed headlines, no commemorative photographs of the kind that populate the walls of people who need to be reminded of what they have accomplished. There were two objects on the shelf behind his desk. A photograph chosen by Deja of the new lobby at the hour before opening the curved wing of the desk, the empty chair behind it, morning light on the waterfall wall, and the original equity transfer agreement from Meridian Ridge, LLC, mounted behind glass in a simple frame, bearing the single coffee ring stain it had acquired from a marble floor on the morning it had been scattered by someone who had not read it. People sometimes asked Ray whether he still thought about Brittany Marsh. He gave the same answer every time. "I think about the entrance," he said. "People like her exist because buildings like mine allow them to. I couldn't fix her. I could fix the building." The building was fixed, and on a Tuesday morning in January, a young man named Devante sat by the waterfall wall with a warm cup and a heart 2 inches lighter than when he'd walked in waiting for the door that had finally permanently decided to open all the way. That was the whole story, and the part of it that lasts, the only part that ever lasts, was not the moment a managing partner came running across the marble floor. It was not the silence that followed the word employer. It was not the footage, or the review, or the terminated contract. It was the entrance that was finally clear. The counter that was finally the right height, and the stranger who came through the door, and for once was not made to feel like one. The cost of basic dignity is zero. It always has been. What Brittany Marsh spent 7 years protecting was not a standard. It was a door she had decided belonged to her. Ray Easton didn't sue. He didn't lecture. He widened the entrance and lowered the counter and hired the person who brought the water. Be that person. Every single time. If this story stayed with you, drop your city and the time you're watching in the comments and tell me honestly what would you have done at 9:07. The honest answers are always the ones worth reading. If you're not subscribed yet, now is the right time. There are more stories like this one, and they don't get easier to watch, but they always end in the right place.